Alright, hi guys. I'm Allison, and we have Mickey and Hannah here from last week. We also have a guest here. Her name is Abby Jo. She's been a part of camp for a very long time. And this week we are talking about lament. We are talking about the example that we get from Psalms of making lament okay, normalizing that within our lives. And then we also, so last week we talked about journal entries. We talked about writing, different types of writing, different methods that you can use to express yourself to God. And so today we'll be using an entry that we got from Abby Jo. And it's a wonderful example of this. You see a lot of the same structure within the Psalms.
Once again, I'm yelling at the sky, God, do you even hear your children's cries? Do you see the woman losing her child, or the man under the bridge who had all he had taken from him? Do you see the young girl sold, or have you turned a blind eye to all the darkness we've sown? Do you see the children the world claims are outcasts? Do you hear the cries we make, or have you turned away? Do you hear the melody of tears, the cries of rage? Oh God, where are you now? Why have you let us make such a mess of this land? In my yelling and in my rage, I hear that still small voice once again say, I collect every tear, I know every cry. None go unnoticed, none are forgotten. The people hurting and broken are where I always started. I too was an outcast. Your company is good. So keep weeping with your brothers and sisters, because this isn't as it should be. Still I am here, never to be or ignore the very ones I hold near. In this in-between of already and not yet, sit with the broken and sit with yourself. Grieve the darkness you've all made. Know when I said it is finished, it means I will not leave it this way.
So I really like that whole entry that Abby shared with us, and I think that something that I really get from it is the importance of not minimizing or ignoring your pain. And any difficulties you may be going through, or people who are dealing with depression. A lot of times in the Psalms, there's laments, and there's these long, sections where people are just pouring out their hearts about what they're struggling with and how sad they feel and what they're hurting about. And there's even Lamentations, which is a whole book about lament. And so I just think that it's very important for us to realize that lamenting is okay, and it can even be really important in developing a relationship further with God and just connecting to Him in that way of sharing something that you feel and that isn't necessarily a positive feeling, but that you can share that with them. And that goes the same with other people, so that you can connect to other people in those hurts in your life that you need someone else to bear the weight with. And with that, I think it also really can increase your own awareness of what you're going through and how you're feeling about it. Getting all of that out and expressing your pain can help you figure out where you're at in that.
And part of that self-awareness means kind of being able to figure out the difference between just thinking about something and really processing through it. Like when you're thinking about something, it's like you may think you're going somewhere, but really you're kind of just replaying this tough situation in your head over and over again, and that can be really hard. It's like it feels like you're just being tossed in the waves, and in every decision you make, it's just random, and it's there's no really thought process behind it, and that can make things worse. And so one thing from Scripture at least, when the Israelites were crossing the Jordan River, and they placed down a stone for each of the 12 tribes. And what those stones represented were, God's promise to God, and a reminder that the Lord was with them before, and that He's always there if we have a situation, or just acknowledging that He is there. So I guess it's good to kind of put your own stones down in the sense that you process through and figure out, this is what's true, this is what I know, this is what the Lord has shown me about myself. And you're anchored in that, so you're not being tossed around anymore. And from there on, you can make decisions that you feel like the Lord is with you in those decisions, and kind of just using those, kind of creating those stones and just putting them down, knowing that you're putting your identity in the Lord through that.
And so sometimes I think, we don't give ourselves enough time. We think things have to happen really quickly, or that, I should be better by now, or I should be over this by now. But something that we always see in the Psalms, something that we even saw in the example that Abby read, was a turning point doesn't always mean that it's solved, but it does show the sense of shifting, that you're inviting God into that space with you, or that you're recognizing His presence in that space with you. Just because you didn't feel Him before doesn't mean He wasn't there. And so as we're going through these times, we don't have to have that limit of, I'm okay, I'm fixed, this is done, it's over, I'm better. It's okay to take our time. These processes, we work through them, we developed through them. We're laying these stones as reminders because this is ongoing. It's life.
And going off of that, I think it's also really important to remember that sometimes you will think, oh, I've been through this, I'm good, it's fine now, it's over. But something that really stood out to me, and I really enjoyed out of the excerpt that he shared, was there's this part where it says, once again. It says, in my yelling and in my rage, I hear that still small voice say, once again. I collect every tear, I know every cry, and I'm going to notice or clear, etc. So, just that little part kind of, I think, emphasizes that often your pain, your experiences, whatever has happened to you that hurts you, is going to be a continuous process. It's not going to be something where you can identify, here's the starting point, here's the ending point. It's often continuous, and as you grow and you see different perspectives, you'll see different things that you didn't notice before about that situation. And you'll learn different things through that. And when you look back, you might feel like you haven't come very far, or that you're back where you started. But if you can look back and remember a point where you feel like whatever happened you started, then you've come somewhere. You've grown in some way, because you're not where you were in that moment. So I think that's really important to remind yourself.
Yeah. So we were talking about that in journaling, about, kind of being able to, the great thing about journal is just being able to look back and see what you've written before, as hard as that may be sometimes. But it really allows you to kind of just self-reflect and, and see those reminders, and like, God was with me in this situation. I didn't see that before, or this is what I've learned, kind of a thing. And so that's, it's something that's very helpful, and it's really important in this, the process.
So, we've been talking a lot about kind of our mental process when we're living. I'm going to call it that, because I don't always want it to be, well, I'm struggling, well, I'm in pain, I'm in hurt, because I don't necessarily want to put that negative connotation on it all the time. But I also want to validate that that's how we feel. That that's an important part of this process. Like Dale said, this growing, this going through our different seasons of life. And so in talking about that, and in coming to points where we start sharing that with other people, there's a lot of difficulties, sometimes we're dealing with it all internally, and we finally get to a point where we think, okay, I've got a handle on it. I know what this looks like. I know what I'm doing to handle it. I know what I'm going through. And then there's that fear of sharing it. That fear is validated in many ways by the ways that people respond to us. And I know I found myself in these same shoes where I say something, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or I look back on it, talking about seasons and looking back, and I'm going, man, the way I responded to that was not healthy. It wasn't healthy for the person I thought I was helping. It wasn't healthy from my own perspective or my mindset. And so we kind of wanted to touch on a few things that people say or do that, from our own experience when we are talking about this, have not been helpful. So ideas of, blaming the victim. Well, And we see that in the way that Job's friends reacted to him, as he was going through all of his situation of, well, what did you do? Well, you must have had some sin in your life, or, well, you don't believe enough. If you only believed enough, or maybe, well, if you only had enough faith, or, well, just pray it away. These comments that maybe the heart behind them, they're trying to help, or we're wanting to help, but they're, in the long run, they're not healthy. And so to self-reflect on that, but think back to those times where were we in it with them? Are we feeling it with them? Or were we just trying to dump our advice on top of them? Are we just adding one more weight to the load that they're carrying?
Yeah, so going off of that, I think that kind of like what Alice was saying, you can easily kind of accidentally make things come across differently than your intentions should make it seem. So, like, if you're really wanting to help someone or be there for them or just share in their pain and help them carry the burden, sometimes it can make it seem like, or you can accidentally end up looking at it as something you're trying to get a product from, or something you just want their suffering to end. And there's nothing wrong with that. You should want your friend's suffering to end. But sometimes it's important to remember that sometimes suffering is a continuous thing. Or, like Allison was saying, in life, it's not unusual for you to have some hurt in your life, but it's not always, a negative thing whenever you are able to share that with someone and help them out or be there for them. But just making sure that you're not making that person feel like they're something you're trying to fix or something you're just trying to get through so that you can, say that they're good now. So making sure that you're just very sensitive to that, I think, is really important if you ever want to be there for your friend and help carry that burden.
I want to add on to that, this idea, even in something as simple as journaling. Last week, we talked about the many methods there are to doing that one thing. And the same, our mental health, our spiritual health, our emotional health, there are lots of resources out there. There are resources that have been traditionally considered religious. There are resources that people would consider more medical. Find and explore those resources. Discover them. Try them. Don't let someone minimize your experience and lock you into just one thing. We're talking about, well, okay, just pray it away. Well, sometimes things need prayer and support group and therapy and medicine and there's so many treatments out there. And if we think about it as us discovering these different methods, these different resources that God has blessed us with, that God has created, that we are discovering, don't limit yourself to looking to only one avenue to solve your problem. It's just part of the process. It's not a problem, but we need to figure out all of the support that we have.
And going kind of along with that, so sometimes once you get to that point where you feel like you're comfortable sharing your story or sharing, something that happened in your life that you feel like someone else can relate to, and you might be able to share that just to make them feel like they're not alone and that whatever happened or whatever they feel isn't abnormal or, not valid. So, though you can sometimes use your pain to be more valid for others and yourself, you can also just make sure you're remembering that you can, in that, lay stones for other people too, like we were mentioning earlier, or you can help them later on, I guess, is more accurate. So, for that, you can just help them find which truths they can ground themselves with. And just by finding those out, sometimes that can help. You want to show people that they're not alone through that. If you are able and comfortable sharing something that happened in your life or that you're struggling with, or something just that someone else can relate to, and you're able to just be there for them, to support them and let them know they're not alone, that can mean a lot to that person. And of course, if you're not comfortable sharing like that, then you kind of have to do it at your own pace and what you're comfortable with. You don't want to force yourself to do something that's going to impede your own healing and can also affect other people's healing. So just whenever you are ready or you feel like that's something that can help you and that person, then I think that's a good way to kind of like how God does in life, make the best of what's going on.
In Genesis chapter 50, verse 20, it talks about how what man has meant for my destruction, God has worked for my good. And we see that is God's heart for all of his children. And I think going off of what you said, he, in so many ways, he takes what has happened, what we've lived through, and he uses it for our good and our growth, and the good and the growth of those around us. And there are so many ways that we do lay stones. We lay stones by sharing our stories, but there are also ways that we lay stones for others just in being present. And being present and going, this is who I know you are. This is who God says that you are. And I think that's also important to remember, that no matter where he has you, where you are and where he's bringing you in that process doesn't invalidate you. Like the level of your pain or the level, it doesn't invalidate you. Where you are at are necessary, and you have the capability of laying those stones for others.
And so with that, I would also like to touch on mental health, just general mental health. It doesn't matter if you have like some source of your pain in life. Sometimes you're just struggling, or you're having a bad day, or anything like that. So we just want to encourage you to make sure that you're focusing on that, you're listening to yourself. And we have found journaling is a good tool for this, which is what we were discussing last time, because you can write out kind of what you're feeling, and it's easier to figure out what's going on there. But just make sure that you're taking care of your mind. And there's a lot of different things with mental health that aren't necessarily considered huge issues, but it's still very important, and you shouldn't minimize anything that's going on with you, and you should make sure that you're just considering all of that and taking it seriously for yourself and trying to find ways to have the best, health in your mind as you can.
Yeah. So something I want to kind of wrap us up with is the last line of the passage that Abby wrote. I loved it. And at first I remember thinking like, oh, I don't really understand how that fits or what she's meaning by that. But the more I reflected on it, so I'm going to reread it. It says, know that when I said it is finished, it means that I will not leave it this way. And this idea of, even Christ up on the cross, we can see his suffering, but we know that it wasn't over. His suffering ended, yet his heart is still with us. He suffers with us. He walks spiritually. He walks with us, even though his flesh and blood feet aren't on this earth anymore. He's in his spirit, and it's not over. We have him. We have him to turn to. We talk to him. We express. We have this conversation. We open up this conversation with Christ. Even in the mess of things, he didn't come because we're supposed to be perfect. He didn't come because we're supposed to be fine. He knew why he was coming, because we would need that support. And so I think that that's just a really good image of he's not leaving it this way. He's not leaving us to suffer in silence. He's not leaving us to suffer alone. Even in those moments that we really feel alone. And so we have that stone to lay down. We have the knowledge of that gets us through, that gives us hope, that gives us foundation, even when hope looks hard, even when hope looks bleak. even before we can call it hope. We know that we're laying down the stone of, I know that Christ is here. I know that His Spirit is with me. And go from there. We each had a verse that we wanted to kind of talk about. That's meant a lot to us through these times, or through times that we've seen ourselves in that struggle. And actually, my verse that I was going to talk about, I know that me and Abby Doe have shared. She shared it with me originally in a time kind of as a stone, of her kind of laying that stone down for me. So we're going to take a little time to share what those have meant to us.
So the verse that has helped me through a lot of, I guess just put in perspective. I'm not going to say it's like carried me through these times, because none of the verses do that. It's our relationship with God. But something that put it in perspective for me, it's Isaiah 43:18 through 19. And it says, "Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not see it? I'm making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." And it was just like, man, how many of us have been in the wilderness where we, like, forest, jungle, things are just everywhere, and you can't see a foot ahead of you. Everything is calling your name and surrounding you. You feel like hedged in, and you don't know where to go, but He's making a path. And then there have been other times where I felt like there was nothing. It was a complete desert, a wasteland. I could see forever, as far as the eye could see, and I just felt like it was empty. But He makes streams in those places. He brings up that water. You know, it said, "Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? Do you not see it?" Like that well, that's His Spirit, and it springs up.
That was, so when I found this verse a few years back, one of the things I loved about it was water is essential for life. And in those desert spaces, it feels like there is no life around, and you can't find life. There is nothing. He gives life. He is the source of our life. And I loved that. I loved that in times when you couldn't see because it was so overwhelming. About the same time I had found this verse, I found another verse, and I believe it's Psalms 27, and in it talks about, "I believe I will live to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living." And both of those verses were really helpful for me through a lot of times over the years, because yes, our hope is in Christ, and yes, our promise is in eternity, but also we have promises here in that He will give streams in the desert and will make a way in the wilderness, and that we will see His goodness even in the land of the living. And those sweet promises that even when times are hard and things are difficult, that He is enough and He will sustain, even though the circumstances might not change.
Okay, so I chose Hebrews 11:1 for my verse, and that verse says, "Now faith is being sure of what you hope for and certain of what you cannot see." So I really like this verse. I feel like it's very clear and concise. It is direct about what faith is, and I like that. And then I guess in terms of struggles and how it's helped me, it's always been nice to remember that even though I can't see the good that's going to come from whatever I'm going through or whatever I'm struggling with, God's going to use whatever bad things are in my life to turn it into something good. And I can be sure of what I hope for, certain of what I cannot see. So, I can't see it right now, but God is working always. So I guess that's what always comforted me and just kind of reminded me. So, definitely love Hebrews 11:1, and it's good to just have like a small little verse in your head sometimes just to remind you of those things. So
my verse is Proverbs 3:5-6, and it goes, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight." So I think that one is kind of like, I think it really helps whenever my brain's just going all over the place and like it's hard to think, but sometimes it's good to kind of just be like, wait, and understand that like if you're able just to lean on the Lord and just submit to Him, that like He's got you. You know, like I think you'll be able to make it through any situation if you realize that He's all you need. You can just submit to Him, and He'll make your path straight. And I think a lot of time we tend to lean on our own understanding of things. I know that I do that a lot. Like, I think that I need to know all the answers in order for things to feel right. But sometimes it's just kind of like you need to be pulled back, and you're like, hey, you know, I just need to submit and give everything to Him, and He knows what's best for me more than I do. So.
Okay guys, it was really great having you. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you next week. If you have any questions, comments, or anything you would like to share, go ahead and put those in the comment section.
See you next week.